Welcome back. Today I am going to be sharing my birth story with you. I was going through my videos and I realized that I never got to sit down and tell you what happened. Ever since Gabriel was born, I just get so excited to share this story because I feel like our birth story is something that you don't hear a lot, or at least something that I don't hear a lot, and I feel like it was crazy and wild. If you are interested in finding out what happened and what made it so crazy, then please keep watching. I have quite a bit to share, so this might be a long one. Grab a tea, grab a coffee, or grab your favorite drink and sit down with me, get cozy, and let's go ahead and start. So I have my drink here, and I have it in a cute little mug. This is hello, my new name is Mommy. So while I was pregnant, I researched a bunch of stuff on pregnancy, on labor, delivery, just to kind of get an idea of what to expect. Because as a new mom, just the unknown is kind of scary. You hear from other women how their experiences went. And again, I was also hearing that every mom has a different labor experience, and even different pregnancies within the same mom can be completely different. I was looking up a bunch of videos. I was on Instagram and following a bunch of pages. So when I was pregnant, I wrote down my ideal birth plan. And if you are currently pregnant, I suggest you doing this. I suggest just writing down what you would like, what you would hope to happen during your labor and your delivery. So it's not to say that everything is going to go exactly how you write it out, because that is one important point that I want to make for you guys, is to just be open about the fact that your birth plan may not happen exactly the way that you wanted to, or exactly the way that you envisioned for yourself, and just be okay with that. It's okay to not be in control of every single aspect of your labor and delivery, because you have to remember that although we have our wants and what we would like to happen, it also depends on where you give birth, depends on who is there, and it also depends on what is going on during your labor and delivery. So how the baby is doing, how you are doing, and how long it's going, all of that. Just be open to change, be open to the possibility that something may not go the way that you expect it to. I listed a bunch of different things that I wanted for myself, and it was just a wide range of stuff. I had my number one goal was to have a natural, unmedicated birth. So if you don't know what that is, really quickly, it just means unmedicated. Just I wanted like no IV if possible, unless absolutely necessary. I wanted no epidural. I wanted to really try to not have it, because I have, just from my personal experience, it may have worked for you, it works for millions of moms all around the world, but for me, my mom did not have an epidural, and my grandma and my great grandma didn't. I don't know, I loved that they were able to share those experiences with me, and I kind of wanted to be the same. So because they didn't, I was like, okay, I really want to give this a shot. I want to give it a try. It is possible. Women for centuries all around the world have given birth without an epidural. I really wanted to give it a try and see if I could do it. No other kind of like laughing gas, none of that. I wanted to try my best to just go all the way natural, and natural, obviously, you know, the natural way of giving birth. I had a bunch of other things on my list. I had that I wanted a water birth. I really wanted to somehow be submerged in water. So ideally, I wanted to have like a birthing pool. I also wanted to be able to play music. I wanted to move around. The thing is, often in a hospital setting, they don't let you move when you are in labor. They just want you to sit down, lay in the bed, and often you are being monitored. So they have machines on you and you're being monitored for how the baby is doing, their heartbeat and all of that. I wanted to be able to move around, walk, and just do whatever I felt that I needed to do in the moment. Fast forward, my original due date was March 28. March 28 came and went and nothing happened. So I was like, okay, I guess we are officially going over. March 29. So the day after, I went shopping with my mom and I wasn't doing any kind of different activity. I was doing my normal everyday activity level. So I wasn't necessarily doing anything to induce labor or to try to get labor started. I was just walking normally, doing what I usually do. So we were shopping and I noticed that as I was walking through the aisles, I was getting a little bit of contractions, or what I thought were contractions. So we're shopping and I keep getting this intense stomach pain. And I didn't say anything at the moment because I wasn't sure what it was. And I was just keeping quiet to myself. I was like, okay, I'm feeling something, but let's just see where this goes. It intensified a little bit, but then it went away. And as the day progressed, I stopped feeling the pain. So that night, we went to bed at around 11, and around 12:50, I think it was almost 1 a.m., I woke up suddenly with extreme pain. And I laid there for a little bit and I tried to see if it would go away, but it wasn't going away. It was getting a little worse. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do right now. I don't know if this is it, or I don't know if this is kind of like earlier. So I was laying there and I was like, okay, I don't know if I wake up Michael because he was fast asleep next to me, or do I try to go to the bathroom and see if it goes away? So I decided I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I get up, and immediately as I get up, I really do believe that it was at that moment that my water broke. My pants that I was wearing just got soaked with water, and I'm standing there and I'm freaking out. I wake him up and he wakes up all confused, not knowing what's going on. I'm standing by the bedside in the dark and I'm like, I think my water broke. And he immediately sits up and he's like, what? I go to the bathroom and I know officially that something is going on. In the bathroom, I noticed that there's also blood in my pants. And that had never happened before throughout my entire pregnancy. So I knew that this was probably it. This was go time. Michael comes in the bathroom with me. We're talking. And if you guys don't know, we also live with my family in the same house. We were contemplating on when to go wake up everyone else. As we're talking, my pain is getting worse. And I remember from the videos that I watched that it said, if you can continue talking through your contractions, then you are still in the early stage of labor. If it gets to the point where you notice you're having a little bit of difficulty talking, then you know you're getting closer. I noticed that some contractions were actually giving me a hard time speaking to him. So that is when I told him, can you please go call my mom because I think we have to go to the hospital. So immediately he starts getting dressed, he starts packing bags. He was so awesome about just getting things ready because I was in pain and I was just trying to cope with the pain. I was laying down. I didn't know what to expect with contractions. So fast forward, we end up going to the hospital. So the OB that I had, she was connected to a specific hospital. And throughout my pregnancy, I wasn't too happy about this hospital because at the time, they had a lot of restrictions going on with like visitors and who can be in the room with you. This was in the middle of, you know, what was going on in the world with all of the restrictions and limits, and especially in a hospital. I was told over and over again that, you know, to wait it out, because by the time that I was giving birth, that restrictions were probably going to get better. Things at the hospital were going to be smoother and just easier, because at the time at this specific hospital, they would not allow my husband in the room with me for more than like 2 hours, which was absolutely ridiculous. They first wanted me there by myself, and they wanted him out in the waiting room, and they wanted to monitor me first and get me in there with a gown and all of that while he is still outside. And all of that was not okay to me, because if you are a mom, you know that when you are in labor, that is the last thing that you want to hear. That's the last thing that you want to experience, is to be told that your spouse can't join you in the room where you are going to deliver your baby. There was just a bunch of other restrictions, like he wasn't going to be able to stay the night with me. He was going to have to leave right after the baby was born. So it was just crazy. So we get there. I kind of had little arguments with the nurses, trying to tell them that that was not okay, that he needed to be in the room with me. One of the nurses gets me in one of the rooms, and she is monitoring me. Now, another thing that I did not want was cervical checks. I wanted very, very minimal medical interventions. I didn't want those, and I told them that I didn't want it, and that immediately set them off. They were not happy with me. They did not like what I was asking for. They didn't really want to work with what I was asking. She hooked me up to the monitor to make sure that the baby was okay. She said, you know, you're doing a pretty good job, because on the screen, your contractions are coming pretty frequent. I just remember being told that my contractions were going to get worse. And at that moment, I couldn't imagine it getting worse, because they were already so bad. I kept asking over and over again, can my husband come in? Can he come in now? You know, he's out there in the waiting room waiting for over an hour, doing nothing, just anticipating when he's going to be able to come in here and experience this with me. They were very adamant that he could not come in yet. So he was like texting me the whole time through my contractions. I'm trying to text him, updating him on what is going on what the nurses and doctors are saying. He was trying to find another hospital that would be able to have better restrictions that would take us in. So he's researching on his end, and I'm trying to figure out what is going on. I'm trying to figure out, are we staying here? Are we having to stick with these rules, or are we going to leave and go to another hospital? Like I said, I initially did not want any cervical checks. I was genuinely curious about how far along I was, just because we were contemplating on leaving and going somewhere else, which I don't necessarily recommend. Giving birth is already stressful enough that the idea of leaving the hospital and driving to another hospital that is further away just adds more unnecessary stress. The nurse insisted on giving me a cervical check to find out how much I was dilated. She said that on screen, my contractions were pretty frequent, like I said. So I was like, you know what, fine. If I'm gonna leave, then I want to leave at least knowing how far along I am. So they checked me, and at the time I believe I was 3 centimeters. This was just about like an hour after I woke up. The doctor comes in and he talks to me. He talks to me about the risks, about leaving. He told me that because I was only 3 centimeters, that he felt comfortable, he felt okay letting me leave the hospital. So the doctor, not a nurse, I want to add this, that a doctor came in and told me that he felt comfortable with having me leave the hospital. He said, you have more than enough time to go home and labor at home. And then he said, in about 4 hours, you can come back to the hospital or you can go to a different hospital. It was like, okay then, if a doctor is telling me that he is comfortable enough to let me go, then I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go and do the rest of my labor at home. Immediately, I knew that that was the right decision because I got to be with my husband and we were figuring out a different hospital anyways. We already knew where we wanted to go. Michael actually had already called the hospital and asked them about their restrictions, and they said that he was allowed to come in. So we were like, okay, perfect. When we need to go back, that is where we're gonna go. We get home really quickly because the hospital was very close. We got home in like 10 minutes maybe. And immediately I want to go in the shower. So like I said, on my birth plan, I wanted to somehow be with water. Now I didn't get my pool that I wanted, but I just jumped in the shower and I just had the hot water running over me to try to make me more comfortable and try to relax me. It helped a tad bit, but it wasn't anything like I can imagine being actually submerged in water. But I immediately, when I got in the shower, I felt like my contractions were getting worse and worse. So it was at this point, I was maybe home for 5 minutes. It was at this point that I realized I was having a very, very difficult time talking. Speaking to someone and answering them was torture to me, and I just really could not do it. This is kind of where the crazy part starts, even though all of that was also crazy. Our experience with the first hospital and leaving is not something that I generally hear people do. But this is the crazy part. So I was home for maybe a total of 20 minutes, where the doctor told me that I could go home and labor there for like 3 to 4 hours and then maybe come back to the hospital. I was there for 20 minutes and immediately my contractions went through the roof. I left the hospital, it was painful. I remember asking Michael to hold me and help walk me to the car. So yes, the contractions at 3 centimeters was extremely painful, where I couldn't walk by myself. But immediately when I got home, it intensified by like 1,000. I just could not figure out the proper way to cope through them, even though I had looked up so many birthing videos, so many laboring pages on Instagram. I looked all of them up and I really researched and studied it for so many months prior, but for some reason at this specific moment, everything was so different. And I wish I could sit here and say that those techniques worked for me, like specific breathing and specific tones of voice and just like going somewhere else in your mind. I wish that those things could have worked for me, but it just didn't. So what helped me was honestly just walking, moving around, and being very, very vocal. I was with Michael in the bathroom and I just remember it getting so bad. I turned to him and I said, I'm sorry, I know that we both agreed no epidural, but I need one right now. I was begging for an epidural. I remember talking to my mom and she was telling me, it's okay, try your best to fight through it, try as hard as you can to just get through the contractions until he comes. I would love to, but I can't do it. I know my initial plan was to not have any medication, but I can't do it. I was in so much pain that I was begging for an epidural. I was like, I need it right now. We were trying to time my contractions and it was just all over the place. I feel like for some reason I was having such a hard time timing them. I feel like they were coming like almost every minute. I barely had any time to even breathe and calm down and relax between the next contraction. That is how I knew that it was time to leave. So we had gotten home for maybe 20 minutes, like I said, and we were immediately having to leave again because I was like, I know we just got here, but this is getting really, really bad. So we get the rest of our stuff, we leave, and as soon as I get in the car, that's it. My contractions get even worse, that I didn't even know that it could get that bad, and I was literally like squirming in the seat, just in so much pain. That's what you don't want to do when you have a contraction. You don't want to tense up. You want to relax and kind of just go with the wave and allow your body to take over. You don't want to fight against the contraction. But I don't know, all of this information kind of just went over my head in the moment, and I just remember in the car tensing up and like moving all kinds of ways in the seat to try to fight through that wave until we got to the hospital. This is now the second hospital. So we did not end up going to the first one. We ended up going to the one that Michael found that was going to have easier restrictions. I finally get there like 20 minutes later maybe, because it was further away than the first one. I honestly could not even get out of the car. I needed him to like physically pick me up, bring me to the door, and immediately as we get in, he asks for a wheelchair because it was that bad. I needed a wheelchair. We go where the labor and delivery is, and I am just screaming in the elevator and screaming through the hallways. My mind was just focused on get me to a doctor because I need an epidural right now. We get to labor and delivery and they're asking me all sorts of questions that at that moment I just wanted to scream. Like, I am in so much pain that giving you my information, giving you my ID and all of these other cards that you're asking for is not on my mind right now. Could not even focus with what the nurses were asking me. Like, I get it, they wanted to register me in, but I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to just sit there in the wheelchair while they input my information. I was like, do you guys realize how far along I am? Because this is intense. And I just remember Michael wheeling me through the hallway to a room, and I remember seeing this other mom there that was also in labor, and she was just like walking so calm to the bathroom, and she looked so happy, and I was like, what is wrong with me? We are in the same place doing the same thing. Why do you look so different? I'm withering in a wheelchair, screaming my head off, and this mom looks perfectly fine. So I remember her even looking at me, and I was just like, help. We get to the room and the nurse immediately sees how bad I am, and I told her everything. I explained that we were at the other hospital and that they checked me. I was apparently 3 centimeters, like literally an hour ago maybe. She checks me again, and right away when she checks me, she looks at me and she says, you're 10 centimeters. My face went pale. I just remember being in so much shock. I was like, what? 10 centimeters? I was just 3 centimeters. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was hearing those words that kind of like kicked my body into motion. When she told me that I was 10 centimeters, I just immediately had this urge to push. I just remember getting up on the bed on all fours and I screamed at her and I was like, I have to push. Right now, I need to push. Michael starts freaking out. He was sitting down next to me. He just gets up and he's like, what is going on? She kind of like held me down and she's like, don't push. She was yelling at me to not push. And in my mind, I was like, what are you talking about, woman? I literally just told you I have to push. It's not something that I can control. It's this urge that is just making me want to push. She's telling me not to because she needs to go get the doctor. And she also told me that she needed to bring me to the other room because apparently we were not in the right room for this. She wheels me to the other room. As soon as we get in the room, there are a bunch of doctors, a bunch of nurses. The room is filled with people. And I remember one doctor coming up to me and saying, we need to move you from this bed to this other bed. And I was like, I literally am like paralyzed. I can't move. Somebody needs to help me go from this bed to this bed. I don't know how I did it. Somehow I managed to grab onto the railings and lift myself up in the middle of intense contractions and get myself on the other bed. And I had pants on at the time, obviously, so I believe it was Michael who helped me remove my pants because even doing that was so difficult. And also, the other crazy thing is at this time, my mom was downstairs and she was trying to come up because I wanted both my mom and Michael there with me when I was actually giving birth. So Michael was going crazy. He was like, we have to get your mom up here. I understood what he was saying, but at that moment I was in a different world that I was just like, you do what you gotta do, you guys figure it out, because I'm just focused right now on getting this baby out and making sure that I can do this. That is when it hit me that I'm not getting an epidural, because when you are at a certain time, you can't get it anymore. So that was kind of a relief, but also very, very terrifying because I knew I could not get it. And the rest of the contractions, I had to fight myself. So there was no more asking for it. I just had to somehow get through it. Finally, my mom manages to come upstairs. So I have both Michael and my mom in the room. I think that was a really big shock for her because she had just dropped us off at the hospital and she was probably expecting it to be hours more of labor, since the first doctor told me you can go home and labor for 3 to 4 hours and maybe come back then. And we were gone for maybe an hour. From 3 centimeters to 10 centimeters, like this. Oh, the other thing that I have to add is the first doctor in the other hospital, what he told me was he looked me in the eye and said, don't worry, you're fine to go home. You're not gonna deliver the baby in the car. That's something that only happens in the movies. He reassured me of that twice. He laughed and he said, don't worry, it's not gonna happen. You can go home, you'll be okay. Even if you go to another hospital that's further away, you're not gonna have the baby in the car. That doesn't happen to people. I was like, okay, I wasn't even thinking of that possibility, but thank you so much for putting that in my mind. Now, looking back at what happened, I was literally like 5 minutes away from almost having my baby in the car. Had I listened to the doctor and spent more time at home, then I would have either had the baby at home or in the car. Looking back, from the time that I was in the car, from the little moment that it took for us to go inside, get the wheelchair, go upstairs and get registered, that was maybe like a total of 10 minutes. So within 10 minutes, I was ready to push. So had we been in the car for 5-10 more minutes, I would have been pushing in the car, which is completely opposite from what that first doctor told me. And that possibility as a first-time mom is incredibly scary. All of these doctors are around me and they are telling me, you know, it's time to push. So they help me get in the right position on my back, which again was something that in my birth plan I didn't want. I didn't want to push on my back. I was just so stressed with everything going on and how quick my labor was that I was just like, I just need this baby out. I am tired of fighting nurses and fighting doctors, that I'm just going to calm down and just let these doctors do what they want to do. For me personally, as soon as I had to push, that is when my labor got so easy. I don't know what it was. I haven't really heard this from anybody else actually, but for me, pushing, it didn't hurt. Pushing for me, the whole time that I was pushing, I believe I was pushing for maybe 20 minutes, I think. We have it in our birth vlog that I will link in the description for you guys to check out. When I transitioned from laboring and then to actually pushing, my contractions didn't hurt anymore. That was actually the moment throughout my whole labor that I was at peace and that I was comfortable. So I was honestly just laying there feeling fine. I was just focused on pushing the right way, pushing the way that the doctors were telling me to push. I was laying there and I was just waiting for the next contraction to come, because when the contraction came is when the doctor told me to push. So I would lay there, I would relax for a little bit, and when the next contraction came, I would push. Again, it didn't hurt. Those contractions, for some reason, were not painful. So for me, pushing was an awesome part of labor. If I knew ahead of time that I could just fight through the contractions earlier and that it would get so much easier when I get to pushing, then I feel like I would have not freaked out as much. There's no possible way for me to have known that, because typically the pushing part is not easy. When I actually gave birth to him, that was extremely painful, but the rest of the pushing was very, very easy, which I am extremely thankful for. So yeah, that was it. I pushed him out in, I think, 20 minutes, like I said. I actually am very happy that I didn't end up getting the epidural, because that is genuinely what I wanted. Now looking back, that is really what I strived for. In the moment of being in so much pain, that is what I wanted, just because I wanted to be relieved from the pain. But I feel like not being in the hospital setting throughout majority of my labor is what helped me not get one. I was at home and I couldn't get one. You know, I could have asked for it a million times, but there was no possible way for me to get one at home. Honestly, genuinely happy that I didn't get it. So that is it, you guys. I feel like our birth story is pretty crazy, just to think that I could have given birth in the car or at home. That is insane to me. That's definitely something that I did not see happening for myself. Also did not expect to get to the pushing stage that quickly. If you guys liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you are updated every single time I post. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought. If you also had a crazy, wild birth story, then let me know, because I definitely want to hear from other women if you had a similar experience. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.